My name is Leigh Reese. I'm 35 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had a solid marriage. Not a perfect one, not the kind you see in wedding highlight reels with string lights and slow dances. Just solid, the kind that felt like something you built together, brick by brick, over years of showing up. Dominic and I had been together for 8 years, married for 6. We met in Melbourne, both waiting out a storm delay at Southern Cross Station, both annoyed, both pretending to read things on our phones. He made a joke about the weather. I laughed. That was it. 6 months of figuring each other out, a year of being sure, then a ring, then a wedding, then a house in the eastern suburbs with a garden I never had time to properly maintain. We didn't have kids yet. That conversation always ended the same way. Soon, when things settle, when work calms down. It never did, but I told myself we were still building, still moving towards something. Dominic worked in corporate PR. I was a senior project manager for a construction firm. Both of us busy, both of us tired. Most nights we ate dinner in front of the TV and called it quality time. Looking back now, I think I confused routine for stability. The first sign something was wrong wasn't a big moment. There was no explosion, no screaming, just distance, slow and quiet like a tide going out. He started coming home later, not dramatically late, just late enough that I'd already cleaned up the kitchen by the time he walked in. He'd go straight to his home office, door not fully closed, just almost. Voice low on calls I couldn't quite hear. When I asked how his day was, I got one word: fine, busy, tired. I told myself it was work stress. His firm had just lost a major client, restructuring was happening. I gave him space. I stopped pushing for conversation. I picked up more of the household stuff without being asked. I told myself that's what you do. You adjust, you support. But the gap kept growing. Date nights stopped happening. When I suggested them, something always came up. His schedule, my schedule, fatigue. We started sleeping on opposite sides of the bed without discussing it. One morning I realized we hadn't properly laughed together in over 2 months. Then, about 4 months ago, a name started coming up. Not constantly, just enough. Shannon used to love this restaurant. Shannon was really good at this kind of thing. Shannon had the same opinion about that. Shannon Barton, his ex. They dated for nearly 4 years before she moved interstate for work. He stayed. That was the end of it. Or so I'd believed for 6 years. I didn't say anything the first few times. I didn't want to sound jealous, didn't want to start a fight over nothing, but something in me was paying attention now, even when I told it not to. And then came our anniversary. We'd booked dinner at a restaurant in South Bank, a proper one, the kind with a dress code and a view of the Yarra. My parents had pushed for it, actually. Mom had said, "Leigh, you two need a night out, just the two of you. Stop letting life get in the way." Dad even offered to pay for the booking. That's how much they believed in us. I wore a dress I'd bought 2 weeks earlier. I told Lizzie about it on the phone, and she said, "Send me a photo. You'd better look amazing." I got to the restaurant first. I sat at the table, checked my phone, ordered water, and waited. He was 20 minutes late. When he finally arrived, he seemed distracted. Not rushed, just somewhere else behind his eyes. He sat down, looked at the menu, we ordered. And then his phone buzzed. He glanced at it under the table. He thought I didn't notice, but I did. I noticed the way his expression changed, the small pull at the corner of his mouth, almost a smile. Not for me. "Who's that?" I asked. "Work," he said, not looking up. The table next to us had a couple celebrating something. They were laughing loudly, clinking glasses. I remember thinking how far away that felt. Halfway through the main course, his phone buzzed again. This time he excused himself, went outside, was gone for 11 minutes. I know because I sat there alone at that table, in that dress, counting. When he came back, he seemed lighter, actually, but not for me. I tried. I asked about his week, about a trip we had talked about taking to the Barossa. He answered in short sentences, kept checking the time. By dessert, I had stopped trying. On the drive home, I stared out the window and thought about what my mom had said when I first started noticing the distance a few months earlier. I hadn't told her everything, but she'd looked at me over a cup of tea one afternoon and said quietly, "Leigh, you're allowed to ask questions. You're not being difficult. You're being a wife." I hadn't asked the questions yet. I was still telling myself there was nothing to ask about. But sitting in that car, watching the Melbourne streets go by, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't know yet how wrong. The morning it happened, I wasn't looking for anything. That's the part I keep coming back to. I wasn't going through his phone. I wasn't suspicious enough yet to do that. I was just making coffee in our kitchen on a Tuesday morning, still half asleep, still wearing the same oversized jumper I'd slept in. Dominic was in the shower. His phone was on the bench. It buzzed once. I wasn't even close to it, but the screen lit up and I caught the preview without trying. "Last night was everything. Can't wait to see you again." No name, just initials. SB. I put my mug down slowly. My hands were steady, but my stomach had dropped somewhere near the floor. I didn't pick up the phone, didn't unlock it, didn't scroll. I just stood there reading those words on the screen until they burned into me. Last night. He told me he was at a work function, client dinner, he'd said, back by 10. He was home by 10:15, kissed me on the cheek, said he was tired, went straight to bed. I heard the shower turn off. By the time Dominic came downstairs, I was back at the coffee machine, like nothing had moved in the world. I handed him his mug. He picked up his phone off the bench, looked at the screen, and smiled. Not a big smile, just a small, private one, the kind that isn't for the room. I watched it happen in real time. "Who was that?" I asked, kept my voice light, casual. "Oh, just a work thing," he said, already sliding the phone into his pocket. "Nothing important." He was lying. I knew it the way you know when a room has changed temperature. Not because of proof, just because of everything. I didn't say anything else. I drank my coffee, he grabbed his keys, he left. And I stood in that kitchen for a long time after the door closed. Over the next few weeks, I paid attention to everything. A passcode on his phone that hadn't been there before, new attention to how he dressed for what he called casual catch-ups, the name Shannon coming up less now, like he'd caught himself and started editing. That told me more than the name ever had. I mentioned it to Lizzie one afternoon when she came over. I didn't tell her about the text. I just said things felt off, that he seemed distracted, that Shannon's name had been coming up, and now suddenly it wasn't. She put her tea down and looked at me. "Leigh, that's not nothing," I said. "I know. Have you said anything to him?" "Not yet." She didn't push, but she reached over and squeezed my hand and said, "Whatever you find out, Mom and Dad's door is open. So is mine." I called Mom at night, didn't tell her everything, just enough, that I was worried, that something felt wrong. She went quiet for a moment. Then she said, "Do you want Dad to come over?" I almost laughed. My dad, retired, 64 years old, still thinks he can fix anything with a conversation and a firm handshake. "Not yet," I said. "I just needed to hear your voice." "Leigh, you've never been the kind of person who imagines things. Trust yourself." I held on to that. 3 weeks after the text, I sat Dominic down. Not a fight, not an accusation. I just told him calmly that I felt like we were losing each other, that I wanted to know if something was wrong, that I was asking as his wife, not as someone looking for a reason to argue. He looked me in the eye and told me I was imagining things, said I was reading into nothing, that I was paranoid, that maybe I was stressed about work and projecting it on him. He said it so calmly, like I was the problem in the room. I nodded slowly and let it go, but something inside me shifted that night. A door closed quietly. I didn't slam it, I just stopped leaving it open. Then came the Wednesday that split everything into before and after. I got home from work to find Dominic already at the kitchen table, glass of red wine in front of him. Not his first, I could tell by the way he was sitting. that loose, heavy stillness. He looked up when I walked in. "We need to talk," he said. I put my bag down, sat across from him, and I waited. He talked for a while about feeling lost, about confusion, about how marriage was harder than he expected. He talked around it so long that I almost stopped listening. And then he said it. "I left a better woman for you. Maybe that was my mistake." The room went completely quiet. I stared at him, just looked at his face, this man I had shared a bed with for 6 years, whose parents I called family, who had stood next to me and made promises in front of everyone we loved. And I said very softly, "Then go fix your mistake." I stood up, picked up my bag, and walked out the front door. I drove for 40 minutes without music, just the sound of the engine and the city. My hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I thought I'd be crying. Instead, I just felt hollowed out, like something had been removed cleanly and the space hadn't registered the loss yet. I ended up at Mom and Dad's. Dad opened the door, took one look at my face, stepped aside without a word. Mom came out of the kitchen with tea towel in her hand and just opened her arms. I didn't explain anything that night. I just sat on their couch while Dad made tea, and Mom sat next to me with her hand on my back, and nobody asked me to be okay. Around midnight, I turned my phone back on. 23 missed calls, 17 messages, all Dominic. "Where are you? Come home. I didn't mean it that way, please. We're not done talking." The last message had come in 8 minutes ago. "I need you to come home right now." I read every single one, then I put the phone face down on the coffee table. Dad had fallen asleep in his chair. Mom looked at me from across the room. "You don't have to decide tonight." "I know," I said, but I already had. I didn't go back to the house that night, or the next morning. I borrowed a jumper from Lizzie, went to work in yesterday's clothes, and buried myself in back-to-back meetings until my brain had something else to do besides replay 8 words on a loop. "I left a better woman for you." Dad had called me twice before 9 a.m., not to pressure me, just to check. That's how he is, quiet, steady, shows up. He left a voicemail the second time that just said, "Leigh, you know where we are, that's all." I held it together until lunch. Then I sat in my car in the car park and just stopped holding it together for about 10 minutes. Then I wiped my face, went back inside, and finished the day. By late afternoon, I knew I couldn't avoid Dominic forever, not because I owed him anything, but because I needed the full truth, all of it, not the edited version he'd been feeding me for months. When I finally picked up his call, his voice was smaller than I expected. "Can we talk?" he said. "Really talk?" "Yes," I said, "but not at the house." We met at a cafe in Fitzroy, quiet street, small tables, the kind of place where nobody pays attention to anyone else. I got there first, ordered a flat white, sat with my back to the wall. He walked in looking like he hadn't slept, dark circles, jaw tight, shoulders forward. He sat down across from me and started talking before the chair had stopped moving. I didn't mean what I said. I was emotional. I wasn't thinking. "You didn't stumble over those words," I said. "You chose them." He exhaled, ran his hair through his hair. "I've just been confused." "About what?" I asked. A pause, long enough that I knew what was coming before he said it. I reconnected with Shannon. There it was. I kept my face still. "How?" I asked. "Online at first, just messages, catching up. Then she moved back to Melbourne, about 4 months ago." 4 months ago. Right when the distance started. Right when her name started appearing in conversation like he couldn't help it. The timeline clicked into place like a key turning. "Have you been seeing her?" I asked. "Sometimes, coffee, lunch, just talking." "And the text?" I said. "Last night was everything. Who was that?" His face changed. "You saw my phone?" "The notification came up, that's all it took." You had no right to— Don't, I said quietly. Not loudly. I didn't need volume. Don't talk to me about rights while you're sneaking around with your ex. It's not an affair, he said quickly. We haven't slept together. But you want to, I said. He didn't answer. That silence told me everything the words hadn't. So what was the plan? I asked. You keep me here while you figure out if she's worth it? Use me as a fallback while you test the water? That's not fair, he said, voice rising now. You haven't exactly been present either. You're always tired, always working. We barely talk anymore. I felt something go very still inside me. I was here, I said. Every night, every weekend. I asked about your day when you gave me nothing back. I backed off when you needed space. I picked up the slack around the house without being asked. I organized our anniversary dinner that you spent on your phone. That's not the same as understanding me, he said. Then help me understand you, I said. That's what I was trying to do. Shannon gets me, he said. She always did. And there it was, said plainly, in a cafe in Fitzroy on a Thursday afternoon. I looked at him for a moment, really looked. She gets the version of you she remembers, the one from years ago, before the job stress and the mortgage and the hard parts of being an adult. I know who you actually are now, and I think that's what you can't handle. He looked away. You didn't go back to her because you were confused. You went back because it was easy, because with her you get to be 27 again, and none of it is real yet. That's not true, he said, but he didn't look at me when he said it. You were willing to keep lying to my face, to keep me in place while you figured out your options. That's not confusion, Dominic. That's a choice. He leaned forward. I never meant to hurt you. But you did, and you kept doing it. He reached across the table then, put his hand near mine. We can fix this, he said. I know we can. Please don't make a decision you can't take back. I looked at his hand, then I looked at him. You wanted to find out if something better existed. Now you get to find out what life looks like without me. I picked up my bag, stood up, left the coffee half finished on the table. That night, I sat on Mom and Dad's back veranda. Dad brought out 2 mugs of tea without asking and sat next to me. The garden was dark, crickets going, that particular Melbourne night quiet that I'd grown up with. I told him everything, the text, the timeline, the cafe, all of it. He listened without interrupting. That's one of my dad's best qualities. He just listens until you're done. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, What do you want to do? Not, what should you do? Not, have you thought about counseling? Just, what do you want? I want out, I said. Clean, fast, done. He nodded slowly. Then we help you do that. Mom appeared at the back door a few minutes later. She'd clearly been listening from inside. She came out, sat on my other side, and said nothing for a while. Then she said, I never told you this, but I never understood why he stopped coming to Sunday dinners. Mom? I'm just saying, she said. A man who wants to be in your life shows up. He stopped showing up a long time ago. I didn't cry. I just sat between my parents in the dark and felt something I hadn't in months, like I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. The next morning, I made 2 calls. The first was to Lizzie. I'm done, I told her. I need help moving out. She didn't hesitate. Tell me when. The second call was to a solicitor. I gave myself 1 day to plan. That was enough. There's a strange kind of focus that comes when you stop hoping things will fix themselves. No more waiting, no more adjusting, no more making yourself smaller so someone else feels more comfortable. Just next steps, one after another. I called a solicitor that Friday morning, not a stranger, The same one who'd handled our property settlement when we bought the house in the eastern suburbs 3 years earlier. She already knew both our names, already knew the title. That saved time. I explained everything calmly. Emotional involvement with a third party, intent to separate, no children, both of us employed with comparable incomes. She asked one question that stopped me. "Are you comfortable returning to the home?" I thought about it, honestly. "Not alone," I said. "Then don't go alone," she said simply. By midday, I had a clear picture of where I stood. Under Australian family law, because we were married, separation could begin the moment one of us decided it had. No court required, no approval needed. I just had to be clear, documented, and protected. I had until the afternoon to make decisions. I made them. I called Lizzie first. "I need you Saturday morning," I said, "at the house." "I'll be there," she said. No questions. I called a removalist. Small truck, half day, 2 guys. Booked for 10 a.m. Saturday. Then I looked up locksmiths. Found one who did same-day work and understood separation situations. Not uncommon, apparently. He'd done it before. I called Mum that evening, told her the plan. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "Do you want Dad to come?" "No," I said. "I don't want it to become a scene. Lizzie's enough." "Okay," she said. Then, "Leigh, are you sure?" "Yes," I said. Another pause, then quietly, "Good girl." 2 words, that was all, but I felt them land somewhere deep. Saturday morning, I pulled into the driveway at 10:05. The house looked exactly the same. Same cream weatherboard, same terracotta pots by the front step that I'd planted with lavender 2 summers ago. Same Hills hoist visible around the side. Just a house. I'd spent 3 years calling it home. The removalist truck was already parked out front. The locksmith was waiting by the gate. Lizzie was leaning against her car with a coffee and a look on her face that said she was ready for anything. Dominic's car was in the driveway. I hadn't expected that. I'd half hoped he'd be out. But his car was there, which meant he was there, which meant this was going to be a conversation whether I wanted one or not. I got out, walked to the front door, knocked once, because it was still technically his home too, then used my key. He was in the kitchen, heard us come in, appeared in the hallway, and stopped. His eyes moved from me to Lizzie to the removalist guys carrying flat-pack boxes, then back to me. "What's going on?" he said. "I'm moving out," I said. "This is your notice." He blinked, like the words hadn't landed yet. "You're... what?" "The house is in both our names," I continued. "We'll deal with that through solicitors, but I'm not living here anymore." "Because of one argument?" His voice was rising already. "Leigh, this is insane." "I told you marrying me was a mistake," I said. "You've been emotionally involved with your ex for 4 months. You lied to my face when I asked you directly. This isn't one argument." He stepped forward. "I told you I didn't mean—" "I'm going to start upstairs," I said, and I walked past him. He followed me up, of course he did. I moved through the bedroom methodically. Clothes first, then my personal documents from the filing drawer, passport, birth certificate, tax records, all mine. Then my laptop and work equipment, then the things I'd bought before we were married or with my own money after. I didn't touch the shared stuff, not the furniture, not the kitchen, not anything we'd bought together. I didn't want any of it. I wanted clean. Dominic stood in the doorway the whole time, cycling through emotions like someone who couldn't land on one. "Please," he said at one point, "just stop. Let's talk about this properly." "We talked at the cafe, remember?" "That's not what I mean. I mean really talk, properly, with a counselor if you want, whatever you need." I folded a jumper and placed it in the box. "You only want to fix it now that I'm leaving. That tells me everything." "That's not true." Where was this energy 3 months ago, 4 months ago, when I was sitting across from you at our anniversary dinner while you checked your phone under the table? He went quiet. I wore a new dress, I said. Dad paid for that booking, and you spent half the night on your phone to her. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. I picked up the box and handed it to one of the removalists waiting in the hall. By the time I came downstairs, he'd moved to the living room, sitting on the couch now, head in his hands. I set a folder on the coffee table in front of him. "What's this?" he asked, looking up. "A lease agreement," I said. "Month to month, I signed it yesterday. I've already got a place in Richmond." He stared at it. "You did all this already?" "I had time, because I wasn't on my phone." He stood up. "Leigh." That's when he noticed the locksmith at the front door, tools out, new deadbolt on the bench. "What is he doing?" "Changing the locks," I said. "You can't do that. I live here." "We both own the house," I said, "which means I have the same right to secure it during a separation. You'll receive a new key once temporary terms are agreed through our solicitors." "This is vindictive," he said. "This is practical," I said. "There's a difference." Lizzie appeared from the kitchen, said nothing, leaned against the wall with her arms crossed. Her presence alone said enough. Dominic looked at her, then at me, then at the locksmith drilling quietly by the front door. "So that's it?" he said. "You're just done?" "You made your choice," I said. "I'm making mine." The removalists finished in under 2 hours. Light load. I travel organized, always have. When the last box was out, I did a walkthrough. Kitchen, living room, spare room, bathroom. Just checking, making sure I hadn't left anything I'd regret. I hadn't. I came out to the driveway. Dominic was standing by his car now, arms at his sides. He looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. "Please," he said one more time, "don't do this." I stopped in front of him. "I'm not doing anything to you, Dominic," I said. "I'm just not staying." "I love you," he said. I looked at him for a long moment. "You love knowing I'll be there. That's not the same thing." I got in my car. Lizzie gave him one long look, got in hers, and followed me out of the street. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. That night, I slept on a mattress on the floor of my new place in Richmond. No bed frame yet, one box unpacked, street noise coming through the window. I slept better than I had in months. The first 3 days in my Richmond flat were quiet. Not empty quiet, not lonely quiet, just mine. The kind of silence that belongs to you instead of being left over from someone else. I unpacked slowly, no rush, a box a night after work. I bought a bed frame from a shop on Bridge Road. Mum came over Tuesday evening with a casserole dish and a spare set of towels, and didn't make a big deal of either. She just put them down, looked around the flat, and said, "Good bones, it'll feel like you in a week." Dad came Saturday, helped me hang 2 shelves without being asked. We didn't talk much. He put the drill down when we were done, made himself a coffee, and sat at my small kitchen table like he'd been coming there for years. "You doing all right?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "Actually, yeah." He nodded, drank his coffee. That was enough for both of us. Dominic's messages started the morning after I moved out and didn't stop for 2 weeks straight. He cycled through everything, guilt first. "I didn't mean any of it, you know that." Then frustration. "You didn't even give me a chance to explain properly." Then bargaining. "What if we just talk, no lawyers, no pressure, just us?" Then something colder. "I can't believe you'd throw away 6 years like this. You changed the locks on your own house. Do you understand how that looks? Everyone thinks you've lost the plot." I read them, every one. Then I forwarded them to my solicitor without responding. She called me the same afternoon. "Keep doing exactly this," she said. "Don't engage. Everything goes through me." "Understood," I said. That last message, though, "Everyone thinks you've lost the plot," that one I paid attention to. Not because it hurt, because it told me what he was doing. Within a week, I started getting calls from mutual friends, carefully worded, gentle tone, the kind of check-in that's really a fact-finding mission. Hey, just wanted to see how you're going. Dominic, mentioned things got pretty intense. You okay? Just heard you moved out. That must have been a big decision. What actually happened? One message from a couple we'd had over for dinner a dozen times. Dominic seems really lost. He says he never saw it coming. Never saw it coming. I sat with that one for a moment. Then I replied to each person the same way, calmly, briefly. He reconnected with his ex while we were married. He told me at our anniversary dinner he'd rather be somewhere else. He told me to my face that marrying me was a mistake, so I left. That's what happened. Some people went quiet after that. Some said, "Oh, I didn't know that." A few stayed on his side regardless. That's fine. People choose. I let them. What I didn't do was perform grief online. No vague posts, no quotes about betrayal, no public anything. My life was not content for anyone's feed. Not his, not mine, not anyone's. Lizzie called me after she'd heard through the same network. "He's telling people you abandoned him," she said. "I know," I said. "Does that bother you?" I thought about it, honestly. "Not really," I said. "The people who know me don't believe it. The people who do believe it, honestly, they're welcome to him." She laughed a little. "Good." The separation papers were served 10 days after I moved out. My solicitor handled it cleanly and professionally. Dominic had 30 days to respond under Australian family law. Standard process, no drama required. He did not take it calmly. He showed up at my building twice that first week, didn't get past the intercom either time. The second time, the building manager called me to let me know, and I forwarded that too, date, time, details, straight to my solicitor. "Document everything," she had told me from the start. I did. His voicemails during that period were something else. 1 minute crying, next minute angry, next minute back to, "I just need 5 minutes, please, I'm not coping." I didn't respond to any of them. Not because I didn't feel anything, I did. There were moments, usually late at night when the flat was quiet and I was tired, that something in me ached. Not for him, exactly, for the version of the marriage I'd believed in, for the 8 years I'd given to something that had been eroding from the inside without me knowing. That grief was real. I let myself feel it. But grief and going back are not the same thing. Mum called one evening during that second week. I could tell she'd been holding something back. "Has he tried to contact you directly?" she asked. "A few times," I said. A pause. "Your dad wants to call him," she said carefully. I almost smiled. "Tell Dad no." "I told you'd say that." "It won't help," I said. "It'll just give Dominic something to point at. Let the solicitor handle it." Dad got on the line then. He'd clearly been in the room the whole time. "I just want 5 minutes with him," he said. "Dad, 3 minutes." "No." He grumbled, but he let it go. That was the thing about my parents during all of this. They were angry on my behalf, properly angry, the kind of quiet kind that sits behind the eyes, but they took their cues from me. They didn't push, didn't make decisions for me. They just stayed close and waited to be needed. I don't think I understood until then how much that matters. 3 weeks in, my solicitor called with news. "He wants to contest the separation," she said. "He's requesting couples counseling, wants another chance." I didn't hesitate. "No," I said. "You're sure?" "File for divorce. Irreconcilable differences, fair split of assets, no spousal maintenance, clean break." Under Australian law, we'd need to be separated for 12 months before the divorce could be finalized. That was fine. I wasn't in a hurry. I just needed the direction to be clear and the process to be moving. She filed the next morning. That's when Dominic's behavior shifted online. Vague posts started appearing, nothing with names, nothing direct, just quotes about being left behind, about loyalty, about giving everything and getting nothing back, about being blindsided by someone you trusted. Lizzie sent me screenshots. "Do you want to respond?" she asked. "No," I said. "Do you want me to respond?" "Absolutely not."
She sent back a string of emojis that told me she disagreed but would behave. I put my phone down and went for a walk along the Yarra. It was a cold evening, gray sky, that particular Melbourne winter chill that gets into your collar no matter what you're wearing. I walked for about 40 minutes, thought about nothing specific, just moved. By the time I got back to the flat, I felt clearer. He was trying to rewrite the story. That was fine. I didn't need to fight him for the narrative. The people who mattered already knew the truth, and the ones who believed his version, honestly, they were welcome to him. 4 weeks after I moved out, Dominic signed the separation agreement. Mediation was quiet, almost uneventful. He agreed to buy out my share of the house. I kept my car, my furniture, half the savings. No screaming, no courtroom, no drama. Just the paperwork of something ending. Afterwards, my solicitor said, "That went smoothly." I said, "He realized I wasn't coming back." "That does tend to change the negotiation," she said. I walked out of that office into a cold Melbourne afternoon and stood on the footpath for a moment. Not sad exactly, not happy either, just present, like something that had been pressing on my chest for months had finally lifted. I called Mum from the street. "It's done," I said, "the agreement's signed." She exhaled, long and slow. "Come for dinner," she said. "Dad's making his roast." I laughed for the first time in what felt like weeks. "Yeah, okay."
The divorce was finalized 12 months after I walked out. In Australia, that's just how it works. 12 months separated, then you apply. No shortcuts. I didn't mind. The direction was already set. The rest was just time passing. And time did pass, differently than I expected. The first few months, I kept my head down. New routines. Morning walks along the Yarra before work. Therapy every Wednesday with a woman in Carlton who didn't let me off easy. Groceries bought for one. Dinners that were whatever I actually felt like eating with nobody else's preferences factored in. Small things, but they added up. Therapy helped me name something I'd been circling without landing on. I hadn't just lost a marriage, I'd lost the version of myself who kept making herself smaller to fill the gaps someone else left, who cooked more and asked less, who gave space instead of asking for honesty, who confused keeping the peace with being loved. That woman had worked very hard for very little return. I was done being her. About 2 months after the separation agreement was signed, I heard through Shirley, a mutual friend who'd stayed neutral throughout, that things with Shannon hadn't worked out. Apparently, Dominic had gone all in. Dinners, weekend trips, plans he'd never once bothered making with me after the first 2 years. The full effort. Everything I'd quietly wished for across 6 years of marriage, handed to someone else. It lasted about 6 weeks. Shannon hadn't wanted anything serious. She'd been honest about that from the start, apparently. Recently out of her own divorce, enjoying her freedom, not looking for a replacement relationship. Dominic had mistaken nostalgia for something more. She hadn't. When Shirley told me, I just nodded. I wasn't glad. I wasn't sad. I just wasn't surprised. He'd chased a memory. Memories don't make plans. They don't compromise. They don't show up when things get hard. They just stay perfect in the past where nothing can touch them. Shannon was a real person with her own life. She just wasn't the story he'd been telling himself. Mom and Dad came to help me properly set up the flat about 3 months in. Proper visit. Dad built a bookshelf I'd had sitting flat packed in the corner since I moved in. Mom brought a plant and a framed photo from when Lizzie and I were kids at Phillip Island, sunburnt, squinting, laughing at something off camera. I hung it in the hallway. It was the first thing that made the flat feel like mine. That evening, the 4 of us sat around my small kitchen table, me, Mom, Dad, Lizzie, eating Thai takeaway out of containers. Dad complained about the parking. Lizzie argued with Mom about something irrelevant. I sat there listening to the noise of my own family filling up my space. At one point, Dad looked around the flat and said quietly,
"This is a good place, Leigh." He didn't mean the flat. "Yeah," I said. "It is." The divorce came through on a Tuesday. My solicitor called just after lunch. I was at my desk eating a sandwich. "It's finalized," she said. "Thank you," I said. I hung up, finished my sandwich, went back to work. That evening, I called Mom, told Lizzie, went for a walk, came home, and sat on my couch in the quiet of my flat and just breathed for a while. No celebration, no grief spiral, just done. Then, about a week later, a message came through. "Dominic." One line. "Can we talk? I think I need closure." I read it once, sat with it for maybe 30 seconds, then I deleted it. Closure isn't something you get to ask for after you've already shown someone exactly where they stood. He didn't need closure, he needed to sit with what he'd chosen. That wasn't my job anymore. Someone asked me recently if I regret how fast I moved. The solicitor call, the locksmith, the lease signed before I'd even had the conversation. I don't. Because here's what I understood by the end. Dominic didn't want to fix the marriage. He wanted to keep me in place while he figured out his options. The moment I stopped being an option, the moment I became a decision he actually had to live with, he panicked. Not because he loved me, because he realized he might end up with nothing. That's not love. That's just not wanting to lose. I spent 8 years with someone who quietly measured me against a past he never fully let go of, who brought another woman's name into our home like a slow leak he didn't bother fixing, who sat across from me on our anniversary dinner, Dad's booking, my new dress, the restaurant on the Yara, and spent it somewhere else entirely. I refused to compete with a memory. I refused to be anyone's backup plan. I refused to stay somewhere I'd already been replaced and just hadn't been told yet. I'm 35 years old. I live alone in a flat in Richmond that is slowly starting to look like me. I have a job I'm good at, parents who show up without being asked, a sister who answers on the first ring, and Wednesday evenings with a therapist who makes me think harder than I'd like. I don't know what comes next. I'm not in a hurry to figure it out. What I do know is this. The life I'm building now is being built by one person, for one person, without apology. And for the first time in a long time, that feels exactly right.